I think it's time to share my birth story. This is a big one. This is a big story. We're 5.5 weeks out. Baby girl right here. So here it goes. Do you know me? Do you not know me? This is on YouTube. You may know me, you may not know me. Here's a little bit of background. I planned a free birth because I trusted my body. Free birth, for those who don't know, is just having a birth with no medical authority around, where you trust your own body, you listen to your intuition, you let your body do the physiological process that your body was designed to do since the dawn of time, before the medical system overtook and made birth way too scary. So, where do I even start? We'll just hop in with the labor process, and then if you have questions about anything beforehand, put them in the comments, and I will absolutely get back to you. On Thursday, February 26th, I woke up at 3 in the morning with some mild period cramps. And I had heard from many women before that this is early labor, but I also knew that this could be false contractions, practice contractions. At this point, I was 41 and 3, I believe, and so I was past my due date. No fear with that. There's a lot of misconceptions about what happens past 40 weeks because I have opinions that I'm going to keep to myself right now. So 3 a.m., mild contractions. And I came out to this couch right where I am right now, and I hung out with my dog, and because that was one of the biggest things that I was grieving during my pregnancy was my relationship with my dog, because I knew that that would change. He's like my little soul guardian. So I hung out with my dog until about 7 o'clock is when my partner's alarm went off. And so I went and I woke him up and I let him know, this is happening. This could blow over. This could lead to labor, but you just go to work and I'm going to go on about my day as normal. I didn't want to make a big deal out of labor because I didn't want it to be prolonged. I didn't want to assume that I'm in labor when I'm not, and all that. So he went to work, and fun fact, right now he works in a different state. And it's not even like he goes to a place, like he travels the state for work. So he was wherever, however far away at work that day. And I went to breakfast with a friend. So she and I met up probably about 9 o'clock. And when we went to breakfast, my contractions slowed down. Not like, they didn't stop. I think I had like 2 or 3 contractions while we were at breakfast, and I never timed any of these, so I have no idea like how far apart they were. But I was around 3 in the morning. I would say they were like 15-20 minutes apart, and then they just progressed throughout the day. So I went to breakfast, contractions slowed down, and it was just interesting. One of the reasons why I chose to free birth was because I had a feeling that my body would tense up if I was not feeling safe. And I didn't trust myself to feel safe in this vulnerable, open labor land with anyone other than my partner. There was a deep part of me that knew that I wasn't able to find anyone else who I would feel comfortable enough with to let go in labor. So I noticed that at breakfast. Contractions slowed down. And then I got home from breakfast and I knew that like my contractions picked up again. I knew that I was in labor at this point. I didn't know, but I had a really good idea. So I thought it'd be a great idea to take a nap because I didn't want to be exhausted during my labor. So I took a nap for, I don't know, a couple hours, didn't time it. And when I woke back up from my nap, my contractions were again progressing. So I kind of knew like, this is happening. This is it. So I turned on some birth affirmations and I laid in my bed. And these were, pretty early contractions. I was able to breathe through them. I called my partner and I let him know, like, this is progressing. You don't need to come home yet, but by the way, how far away are you? So he was an hour and a half away. So I knew that when I needed him, it would take him an hour and a half to get home. So I laid there for maybe like 3-4 hours listening to these birth affirmations, just breathing through my contractions. Nothing unmanageable. And then it got to the point where I had a feeling I wanted him to start heading home. So I called him, and in all divine timing, he told me that he just got off the phone with his boss and he was on his way home already. So like he heard me calling in another language. So I knew that he would be home in about an hour and a half, continue just laying in the bed and breathing. He turned out to get caught in some disgusting traffic, like 15 minutes away from the house. And so he took an extra maybe like 30 minutes, but whatever. And when he got home, he already knew his job was to turn the living room into my oasis, put on the meditation music, dim the lights as much as possible, be quiet, and he was perfect. He did such a good job. Coming home, I knew that he was going to be stressed out because of the traffic, and he did such a good job at leaving that outside and like respecting the birth space, and it was everything I could have asked for. He got home, he filled up the birth pool. We had it already inflated in the living room because I knew that I did not want to listen to an air compressor when I was in labor. He filled up the birth pool, and then I want to say that I got into the pool probably about like 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. And to be honest, this is where my timing kind of goes out the window. This is where the linear progression of things kind of go out the window. And I'm going to give you the best of my memory. So I know that I would labor in the pool, sitting and squatting and kneeling. Those were like my 3 positions in the pool. Once I would exhaust myself in the pool, then I would go to the bed. And when I was in the bed, I have these like wedge pillows, and I had one on the bed and I was leaning over it to squat or kneel, because I knew that like I wanted gravity to help me because that just makes sense with birth, to have gravity help. So I wanted to be on my knees or squatting as much as possible. So I would go to the bed, labor there, and then when I got exhausted in the bed, then I would go sit on the toilet, because that is where your body naturally wants to let go and release from that part of your body. And then when I would exhaust myself on the toilet, I would come back to the birthing pool. And I honestly didn't expect myself to move around so much, like to switch these stations so much. And I can't even guess how many times I got out of the pool, how many times I got into the bed, got into the toilet, and all that. And the whole birth process, so he recorded bits and pieces of it, and I might show a clip if I feel like doing that, editing and whatnot. He recorded a good chunk of the birth process, and I was really just breathing through these contractions, and then I started moaning through the contractions, and then I just let my vocal cords open up and do whatever they wanted to do. And I knew that I've heard that like keeping your jaw open and using like low tones relaxes your body. You don't want to like tense up and screech. And so I was definitely focusing on that, just letting my body take over and letting my voice move the waves through my body. And it really, I just wanted to say it really was a pleasant experience. Like that was the first thing that came to mind. It was pleasant. And I remember telling him at one point, like, this is feeling oddly familiar. This is my first birth in this lifetime, but I remember this is oddly familiar. Like, I've done this before. I remember what's happening. This isn't scary. This is just what's happening. I was focusing on letting my body open. And I knew that transition was coming, and I knew that transition meant that I was going to get scared, or there's a probability that I would get scared. And if that happened, I knew it was transition, and I knew that that meant that baby would be here maybe in 30 minutes, maybe in 2 hours, who knows. And I just let myself go and I let myself labor. The hardest part was holding myself up with my arms. My shoulders got so tired over and over and over. I think that was the biggest reason why I kept switching positions. And I wish I would have done more prenatal yoga. I wish I would have done more upper body training, which is what I will probably take into my next birth. Where are we now? So transition hits and I feel myself get scared. And my partner knew that this was coming. My partner knew that I was going to look at him at one point and say, I can't do this. And he knew that his role was to say, this is normal, you got this. So the moment came, I let it happen. I let myself express my fear. He reassured me, you got this. Whatever, I don't remember how he phrased it, but it worked. And I got back into labor land and I totally relaxed and I trusted and I let my body open up and I was laboring and laboring. And it might have been at this time when I started pushing, not forced pushing, like my body wanted to push. And so I was letting my body push. So I was letting the contraction come through my pelvis. That's what I remember in this part. The contractions were very low in my pelvis. Then the fear came up again. I don't know, maybe half hour, an hour later, and same pattern. Nope, you're fine. I trust you, trust your body, everything's okay. Okay, I believe you. And I really did. And I got back into labor and I let my body do her thing and I let the things move through me. And this pattern kept happening. And kept happening and kept happening. And I knew that a lot of time had gone by. And I knew that I didn't know. I intuited, right? I intuited that something was actually wrong, that this wasn't progressing. So that was another layer of my fear that kept coming up. Like I knew that something was not right. So at this point, I started actually vocalizing to him, like, well, this is what's happening. And because I was in my labor land, I had my partner checking with ChatGPT. Is this a normal part of labor? Does this mean that something is stalled? What could this mean? And I really trusted my body so much going into this. And I knew that when things were happening, they would just happen. And if something was wrong, I would know. And this is where I got to the point where I felt like I knew something was wrong. So I did not go into fear. I did feel fear, but I did not give into the fear and like close up and like, oh my God, I don't know, I can't do this. But there was a definite sense of like something isn't right. And we went through this fear, calm, I would say maybe like 5 or 6 times. Inputting into ChatGPT, this is what's happening, this is what I'm feeling. At this moment, I can't remember what the symptoms were. I can't remember what was actually happening and what we were asking ChatGPT about. But we got to the point where I was actively pushing for 6 hours and I thought that my water had not broken yet, because I never saw a mucus plug and I never heard a gush. So I, in labor land, thought that my water had not broken yet. And throughout this time, I was in the pool and throughout the span of maybe an hour, I had done a handful of vaginal exams to myself. I just put my hand up there to feel what I could feel. And what I felt was I thought it was my water sac. It was a round, squishy, mucusy, like watery something was there. And I would let myself have multiple contractions. I'd go up there again, exact same spot. Okay, relax. Multiple contractions, go up, same spot. I knew that it was super late in labor. I didn't think my water broke. It's not progressing. We put it into ChatGPT and it was like, you might need help. And it was really hard. I love my partner so much. It was really hard for him to admit that we were needing help, because I asked him to support me, and I asked him to let me know that we could do this. And that's all he wanted to do. He just really wanted me to be able to do this. And it took a lot of convincing for me to tell him, like, I shouldn't have been in transition for this long. Like, I shouldn't have been in this fearful moment for this long. Like, it should have happened, whatever. That's what I was feeling in the moment. And it's still processing. There's still a lot of questions that I have about this moment in time. But in the moment, it's time to go. There's something not progressing. It's not right. For an hour or two, or I don't know how long at this point, but I had questioned over and over, if we do go to the hospital, what are they going to do? Like, what are they going to do? I have a lot of opinions about how the hospital handles birth, and I have a lot of opinions about how they pathologize things that are natural, and it was probably more scary to think about going to the hospital than it was to continue this birth, how it was going. And I thought about it for a very long time, and I kind of knew if we go to the hospital, they're not going to help me vaginally deliver. They're not going to cheer me on and say, like, you can push her out. Like, they're going to push a C-section because that's what hospitals do. So when we made the choice to go to the hospital, I kind of swallowed the fact that I was choosing to have a C-section. So at that point, we were in the tub. And at some point, he got in the tub with me to help and all this stuff. And I was so ready. I was so ready to bring my baby through. But it felt like I couldn't do it. Like, for real. So he got me into the bedroom, and I was able to put on a maternity dress that at this point was way too tight. Did not throw on any underpants. No shame. I'm in the middle of labor. And my gosh, I didn't realize how hard it would be to walk while in labor. It took probably 10 minutes to walk around the corner to get from the living room around the corner into the bedroom. So I was putting my maternity dress on while he was setting up the truck. So we have a pickup truck, and my dog usually gets the back seat, so we don't have the seats down. The seats live up. And so my partner was setting up like pillows and blankets back there and towels so I could just be on my hands and knees in the back of the truck. And that's how he transported me to the hospital. It was also freezing. It was like 30 degrees. At this point, it was about 8 a.m., 7 or 8 a.m. the next morning. So I calculated that I was in labor for 28 hours and I was actively pushing for 6 hours. Oh, that's right. I missed the part about the fetal ejection response. So I've heard about this sensation, and I believe I was feeling it, and I would love, if you are a woman who has birthed, who has felt the fetal ejection response, please tell me if this is what I was feeling or not, or whatever. During the contractions, like early on, I was feeling them mostly in my pelvis. They were low. Then it switched, and for like 2 hours, I remember the contraction would come and it would start in my pelvis, and then it would go from like the top of my abdomen, uterus, and I would feel it squeeze at the top, and then I would feel it squeeze in the bottom or the middle, and it would like descend. So it would start real low in the pelvis, and then it would go top squeeze, middle squeeze, bottom squeeze. And to me, I was like, this is my body ejecting my baby. Like, this is what's happening. So that was also what I thought was happening. So please tell me if that's what I was feeling or if that resonates with whatever the fetal ejection response is. So all of that was happening for like a really long time. And I know that first time births take a lot longer. And I still feel like I'm trying to justify to myself that I chose to go to the hospital. Like, this has really been messing with me. It's really been messing with me. And I just followed my intuition in the moment. So we drive to the hospital, 15 minutes. It wasn't that bad. The ride wasn't that bad. I felt my body tense. When we got into the truck, my body knew we're not safe. This is not where we're having our baby. And my contractions slowed down, and that fetal ejection response stopped. Like the uterus contractions that I was feeling, not the pelvis ones, completely stopped. We got to the hospital. So he brought the wheelchair to the car, obviously, and I was able to get on the wheelchair on my hands and knees, like facing the back of it. So he pushed me in. They stopped us at security and had my partner empty all of his pockets to make sure that he wasn't carrying any weapons into the hospital while I'm in labor. I just felt really cared for by the hospital at that point. I felt like they really had my best interest in mind at that point. So they pull us right up to labor and delivery. At this point, also, we had reached out to a couple friends to come meet us at the hospital for support, because I didn't know what state of mind I would be in while I'm in active labor and I go to the hospital. Like, I didn't know how much of my own advocate I could be. I also wanted my partner to feel supported, because this is a lot, and I'm sure he was extremely worried about what was happening to me because we're going to the freaking hospital. So I reached out to a couple friends. One of them did meet us at the hospital, so she's in the room with us, labor and delivery, and they first did, so they got me in the bed, and all I wanted to do was be on my hands and knees. Like, any other position was miserable. So the OBGYN came in and had me get on my back so we could do a vaginal exam. Okay. And I don't even remember being asked. I don't remember. This was a blur. And these were things that, like, I heard about hospital births, how, like, they don't ask for your consent. They just tell you, all right, I'm gonna jam my hand inside of you, and then they do it. And it's not, like, that's kind of grapey. So I don't remember what actually happened in the moment, but I know we did a vaginal exam. She told me, this is when I found out that, yes, my waters had broken. The days later, I recapped with my partner, because when I was laboring in the bed, he was watching what was happening, because it was the coolest thing. And I think that's awesome that he was so interested in what was happening, and he was, like, wiping blood and stuff that came out. And I do believe that he saw my mucus plug, but he did not know that it was my mucus plug, so he did not, like, communicate that, hey, this is what happened. So that's the story that I have right now. So vaginal exam, yes, your waters have broken, there's meconium. And when she said that, I was like, all right, this doctor is gonna be terrified, because that's, like, the big bad word in labor. And then, so after the vaginal exam, all right, go ahead, flip over on your hands and knees, get comfortable. And I took 5 minutes to flip back over on my hands and knees, and then, like, 30 seconds later, all right, we're gonna do an ultrasound, get back on your back. And I was just like, why can't this just be a little more streamlined? But so then we did an ultrasound, and it was the first ultrasound that I had in this whole pregnancy. And she was able to see that the baby was in a good position, the placenta was in a good position. They had no reason for me why I could not birth vaginally, but my partner did ask, is there any way that we can deliver this baby vaginally? And it was, no, there's not. They also did hook up, like, that heart rate monitor around my belly, like, right when I got there, and we could hear that baby was not distressed. She had a really good heart rate. So no, there's no way to do a vaginal birth. Okay. So then they went through all of the questions, all of the, like, this is what we do, these are the meds we give you, and I was saying yes and no to things that I wanted and did not want. I couldn't tell you all the specifics at this point, but I was really happy that I spent so much time listening to the Free Birth Society podcast, I did learn a lot about what happens in hospital births, and I felt that I was very well informed about what to expect. I have opinions about when I mentioned this podcast and this group, because I know that there's a lot of smear campaign all over the internet about them. And when it comes down to it, if you are going to hear someone else talk about their experience and then you just accept it as your truth blindly, it's your fault if something goes wrong. You can listen to people talk about their experience and then use your own critical thinking and do your own research based off of what they say, and then trust your gut and your intuition about what works for you. That's how I use this podcast. I heard so many birth stories, so many free birth stories, and a lot of them started with women who had had 1, 2, 3 multiple births in the hospital. They talked about all the mistreatment that they experienced in the hospital. Then they had these free births, and this is how beautifully it went. So I'm not just blindly following some cult because I'm not a freaking idiot. So that's where I think that no one has any reason to shit talk anyone who leads anyone in a way, because I'm so worked up about this, because it's no one's fault. It's your own fault if you don't listen to your own intuition, do your own research. So I learned a lot from that podcast about what happens in the hospital and what these medications can do, and all these things, and did my own research behind learning all of that from them. So I knew what to say yes to, and I knew what to say no to for my preference, because it's my body. And to be honest, like, they were a little hesitant, the hospital staff. They were a little tiny pushy about some things, but for the most part, they respected what I wanted. And I actually prayed for that when we were in the car on the way to the hospital. That's what my intention was. Like, please just give me people who understand where I'm coming from, who let me do this closest to the way that I want to do it. But gosh, there were, I want to say, like 8 to 10 people in that labor and delivery room. And again, my contractions slowed down even more than they did in the car. So I just feel so validated in my own intuition that I knew that being around someone that I'm not comfortable with, my body would tense up. I watched it happen over and over and over. I remember one of the biggest things. Okay, so I had 3 big things with how the hospital is going to handle my birth. Number 1, we are taking the placenta home. And they said, okay, we just need you to fill out a waiver. Perfect, that was easy. Number 2, delayed cord clamping. If I did this, we were prepared. So we didn't know what we wanted to do with the placenta and the cord at home, but I was prepared for either cutting the cord, doing a cord burning ceremony, or a lotus birth. And if you don't know what a lotus birth is, that is when you leave the placenta attached until days later it naturally detaches from the baby. And there are many different reasons why people do this. To me, it was a spiritual honoring, letting my baby choose when she detaches from her twin, essentially. Like the only thing that she had known her entire life that was giving her food and protection and nourishment. So I didn't know if we were going to do a lotus birth, but I damn well knew that I was going to leave the cord until it was white and limp to let all of the placenta blood transfer to my baby, who owns it, because I grew it with my body and it was for her. So we mentioned how important delayed cord clamping was for us, and they said, okay, we can delay it 1 minute. And we pushed back on that, and they said, we could do 1 minute. Okay, all right. I'm in their care. I have to surrender. This is what is happening. That sucked. Okay, so we're taking the placenta home, delayed cord clamping, and then I'm so happy my partner was there. He was the one who reminded them, like, we want immediate skin to skin. And they said, well, in the hospital, it is protocol to take baby to a warmer and do all these checks. I forgot, there's like that little acronym of the checks that they do. And then we can, like, pull mom's gown down, and dad, you can hold baby on mom's skin. And again, if it was a normal physiological birth, I would have pulled my baby from my vagina and put her right on my skin, and that's what I wanted. But in this setting, what they described is what I could get, and it really was pretty easy for me to surrender when I was there. I swallowed so much pride, and I knew that there was only so much fighting I was ready to do. It wasn't the time to fight. I had done the fight was me prepping, the fight was me researching, the fight was me learning what I wanted, listening to my baby throughout the pregnancy and all that. So, okay, but please just get her on us as soon as possible. And I felt like when we were at the hospital, we were really good at being very firm in what we wanted, but also very polite. Like, I didn't demand anything from them, but I was extremely firm. I let them sense through like my body language that I'm not messing around. Like, this is my birth, this is my body. I expect to be respected here. And I think that played a layer in how accommodating they were to our wishes. So I want to say we were in the labor and delivery room for maybe 45 minutes before they started wheeling me down to the OR for the C-section. And they also brought in the anesthesiologist who was going to, it's not an epidural, but he was describing the shot that he was going to put into my back to numb. I was numb pretty much from tits down. And they were saying that it was unsanitary for my partner to be in the OR with me while I was receiving the shot, but he could come in during the surgery. And it was just not making any logical sense to either of us. And then we expressed that it didn't make sense. And then they said, okay, he could be in the room for it. So that was just an interesting part. So I get back in the wheelchair on my hands and knees. They wheel me down to the OR. At this point, I was with my nurse. Her name was Heather. We were at Elmhurst Memorial Hospital in Illinois. Heather was the labor and delivery nurse. She was my favorite. Out of all the people that I dealt with that whole trip, Heather, love you. I'm pretty sure it was her who was pushing me at this point, and I remember her making the comment like, I've never pushed anyone in a wheelchair this way, but it was the only way that I could get comfortable, barely comfortable. So then we get to the OR, and they pull me up to the operating table, and I stand up, and I'm at the head. And they say, okay, now you have to walk around the foot of the bed to the other side so that you can get on the bed from the other side. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. How many contractions have I been having in this last 45 minutes to an hour just talking about this? So as I was walking from the one side of the bed to the other, I swear I had 5 or 6 full on contractions. And these got more intense. So what I'm thinking is that this was my body realizing I'm safe, I have support, I have like we're in motion again, I'm getting help, this is happening. And so my fetal ejection response started coming back. It was intense. Those were very intense contractions, just to walk to the other side of the bed. It was ridiculous. I wish baby would have started crowning at that point. That would have been the best, but she didn't. So I got on the table, they put the shot in my back, and then I had to lay down, and that was so hard. But as soon as I laid down, the anesthesia flooded through my body, and I was numb. Tits down. And they kept doing the tests, like, oh, can you feel this? Can you feel this? Yes, I can. Okay, we'll wait. The anesthesiologist was super cool. He was very, I felt so comfortable. He was just the coolest. He had a nice soothing voice, and it made me feel very safe. So they cut me open, and so before when we were in labor and delivery, they knew I had little to no medical care. So they knew I had no ultrasounds. They knew that I didn't know if it was a boy or a girl. So they said, do you want us to tell you, or do you want us to show you? And we said, show us, that's what we want. So they cut me open. 5 minutes later, I hear crying. And that was amazing. Like, it was so fast, and she came out crying. I don't believe they had to do anything to get her to cry. I'm pretty sure she came out crying. And they were like, all right, we're going to open the curtain and we're going to show you. And they pull down the curtain, and it's just her groin right in our face. It was like right there, like, here, it's the girl. And then they showed us her face. And both of us, well, I can't speak for my partner, but I was blown away. I was so convinced that it was a boy the entire pregnancy. I was so dead set that it was a boy. Boy names were like flooding to me really early. It took us a long time to figure out a girl name. I just knew it was a boy. And it wasn't. And my joke throughout my whole pregnancy was, if it's a girl, she's going to continue to surprise me for the rest of my life. Well, look at how she came into the world, so it's valid. So they show us her parts, and then her face, and then they took her over to the table. And I was hysterical, just meeting my baby for the first time, realizing we have a little girl, so happy, yay, we're cuddling. And then I don't know how much time passed, but my partner was like, oh, right, I have to keep my eyes on the baby. So he went over to the table. At one point, it was probably before they took her to the table, now that I think about the process, but at one point, I did hear them call out 1 minute, and I was like, oh, okay, that's their cord clamping, 1 minute. And so then my partner is over at the table, and I hear someone ask, do you want to cut the cord? And so I was like, oh shit, like, they said 1 minute, probably about a minute ago, and now they're asking him to cut the cord? Like, she got 2 minutes? Maybe they were just being really nice to us? Great, awesome. So I hear that, and then they were over with her for maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes. It's hard to say how long, but then they did bring her over, and they put her on my chest, and my partner was able to, like, be there and hold her on my chest, and we hung out for a while, because it took probably 30 minutes for them to sew me up, clean me up, sew me up, whatever the hell they were doing down there. I was just like this for half hour. I just felt my body going left and right, jostling all over the place. And they, yeah, that was really nice. That was really nice meeting my daughter. I'm not going to tell the whole after story, but here are some main points. We went into the recovery room, and this is when I found out that I'm going to be there for 2 hours, and my friend who was with us is not allowed to come to the recovery room, so we called her and made sure to tell her to go home. The other friend that we reached out to, she had shown up to the hospital, and she was just waiting in the waiting room for us, had no idea what was going on, because these people knew that I was planning on free birthing. So the fact that I ended up in the hospital, they were like, what the hell is happening, right? So they're on edge, but we were able to communicate with them. Everyone's safe. We had a baby. Everyone's good. So we're in the recovery room for 2 hours, and this is, we're about to go up to postpartum. And there were 2 labor and delivery nurses with us at the time, and right before we left, they were like, so we have to tell you something before you go up to your postpartum room. Great. What is it? So we found in the hospital policy that because you had little to no prenatal care, your placenta has to go to pathology, and they're going to cover it in formaldehyde, and so you cannot have it back. And I was pissed. And I was able to eloquently communicate that you set the standard that I was going to take my placenta home, and now out of the blue, it seems like after you have gone through this process is when you find this policy that feels a little disrespectful. This isn't like a little deal to us. It's like a religious, spiritual reason why we want to take the placenta home. Like, this is my right, this is my body, whatever. And they said that they would send up the director to talk to me about it. Cool, I'll talk to the director. We'll see what happens. that was that. And then shortly after we got to the postpartum room, the director of like women's health, I think she was, and my OB, who did the surgery, they came to the room and they explained the policy again. They just regurgitated the same thing that the nurse said, and I regurgitated the same explanation about how important it is to us. And I remember the director saying, like, well, we want you to have your placenta. We want you to take it home. And if you could give us any sort of prenatal paperwork, if you can come up with any forms showing that you had prenatal care, we can get you your placenta. So I said, okay, I'll figure it out. And so I started going through my options of how I could get prenatal paperwork. And then I asked one of the nurses for this policy in writing. Just curious. I just want to see where it comes from. And she brought the paper, and on the policy, directly under it, it says something other worded, but something about like, this is not set in stone. It is based on personal discretion. So right then and there, I thought, the director told me that she wanted me to have my placenta. So if she wants me to have my placenta, she's going to give it to me because that's what the policy reads. And I never had to fight my case. The director, after that, then brought my placenta to my room. I hope it's mine. She brought the placenta to the room on ice, and she said, we're just going to leave this here. Once you come up with the paperwork, we'll just let you have it, whatever. And both me and my partner were like, this might be their way of just stepping around the policy without telling us that they're going to step around the policy. And that's essentially what happened. No one ever officially asked for my paperwork. I never addressed it. We took the placenta home, and it was right within like the last 5 minutes, right before we left, that our other really cool nurse, whose name I can't remember, our other really cool nurse, as we were being discharged, she brought in the paperwork and she's like, you're taking your placenta home, right? Can you just sign this saying that, like, if you get sick from eating it, you're not going to sue us and whatever. So that worked out. But that was hard the whole time. Like, I had to fight for what I wanted to do with my body parts the whole time that I was recovering from a birth and major surgery. Like, that kind of sucked. But that's what happened with that. We got the placenta home. I'm not going to eat it because we did not do the best job at keeping it on ice. We're going to bury it at some point. It's in the freezer. And then the other part that my partner didn't tell me about until like 4 weeks after birth is when he cut the cord. He really didn't want to tell me, but he never saw the placenta. When they asked him, when they had baby over on the table, he didn't even realize it in the moment because, you know, like everything's just happening so fast and there's a lot of emotions. He realized it a couple days later that the baby wasn't even attached to the placenta when they asked him, do you want to cut the cord? It was just like a ceremonial, it's already severed, here, do a little snip. So that made me feel weird also. And I didn't put two and two together, but C-section versus vaginal birth, where you also birth your placenta, like C-section, the placenta's still attached, and the 1 minute thing, and yeah, who knows what happened. That also feels weird to me, that like I don't fully know what happened to me. I do want to watch a C-section video, but I am not yet ready to do that. I will do that at some point just so I know what happened. And then, yeah, for probably the better part of 2-3 weeks afterwards, there was a lot of questioning. Did I do the right thing? Did I wuss out, right? Did I get to the hard part and then quit? And it's so hard to logically describe what happened in such a non-lucid space. Like, Laborland is a crazy place. I felt so instinctual, but I can't remember any of it. Like, I knew what I was doing in the moment. I had full trust that I knew I was totally acting on instinct and intuition, which is what every single mammal does during birth, right? So yes, my free birth turned into a C-section, and I can't change it, and it is what happened, and I will plan for a VBAC next time. I will have, well, I would like to have a vaginal birth after cesarean. And at this point, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to seek out more support next time or not. I know that my body is now in a different state than it was with my desire to free birth. My strong desire to free birth also came because I was super healthy. I was super active, super fit, no health issues, felt good. I have a good relationship with my body, so I knew that I would be able to sense if something was off. And now, like, my insides have been cut open, so I don't know what that's going to do to me. So I am not planning on getting pregnant for quite some time. But we'll see what happens, right? Everything is up to surrender. Everything is up to chance. I may or may not be open to having more support next time. So that's where I'm at. Thank you for listening. Feel free to ask your questions. That's my birth story. And I would show you my little girl, but she's eating. Bye.